Should Christians stay in a vault and wait till there's a new heaven and a new earth? Well, we're going to answer that question. We're going to talk about whether or not we should be vault dwellers or surface dwellers within the kingdom of God, as well as what we thought of the new TV series Fallout on Amazon Prime. I'm so excited. This is going to be so much fun. Guys, we're the geeks. We're the priest of the geeks. We're the geeks. We're just geeks. We're all just geeks. I'm Joshua Noel. I'm really excited to be here with some of the best people I know. The one and only Christian Ashley. Thank you so much for existing, Christian. You are a treasure and a gift to us all. There it goes. And of course, we're also here with one of our other hosts, the one and only Kevin Schaefer. Man, this lag is killing me. And last but not least, we have a former host, recurring guest, especially now that school's starting to wrap up. We have beauty incarnate, Nick Polk. How's it going? Oh, there's the lag.
I'm doing well. I'm feeling extremely beautiful.
Oh man, glad to hear it. Well, guys, this is one of our What's News episodes. We're going to be focusing on one new thing this episode because there's four of us who all just desperately want to talk about a TV series that's like 8 episodes long. So that's like 8 hours of content, and we have to like our episodes twice as long as what we're covering. So it's going to be a 16-hour long episode. It's going to be great. If you don't mind giving us a rate and review, if you're on Apple Podcasts, if you're on Spotify, hit that 5-star and the little bell on the top. And if you're on the laptop, go over to podchaser.com because liking and subscribing, liking and reviewing and everything over there helps the algorithms. If you're on YouTube, smash that like and subscribe button because if you don't, you're smashing Will's heart, and no one wants to do that. It's just sad. Will's too nice. Will's too nice. Also, we want to thank one of our supporters. You can support the show on Apple Podcast, Patreon, or on Captivate, like Justin Vaughn. Thank you, Justin, so much. You rock. You're an amazing fellow. We all wish we could be like you, except for Nick. Nick is like you. Nick's wonderful. What's funny is Christian is also one of the supporters of the show, and like, we all support the show so much just in our own right. But you know what? Today we're honoring Justin. So there you go. With that, since it's What's News, we're not going to tell you what we're geeking out on. We are going to do a lightning round. We're going to talk about some of the other new things that we have been digesting in our geek culture realm. I'll kick off with one. Actually, I'm going to kick off with 2, and I might come back to a few others, but I'm going to start by saying, yes, guys, I've seen all the rumors about a Kingdom Hearts movie. I have never been more weary of something in my entire life because the story is just so convoluted. It's almost like I wish other people didn't know what the story was, because if they did, they would all know exactly how much is wrong with me for following this so hard. Because the story does not make sense.
Yeah. What worries me is that it's probably not going to be full animation. There might be live action, according to some of the rumors. I hope that's wrong.
Then it's
I want to be wrong.
Yeah, and then it's like, if you can't get some of the original voice actors, like, how are you going to do all the Disney worlds? And I'm like, this feels like a mess. This feels like it's not meant to be a movie. Maybe. Listen, I love Kingdom Hearts, but maybe let's up. Just maybe.
It should be an animated series.
The other one I was going to mention, I am still reading see, that'd be good. An anime would be good.
Anime too, but animated.
To get off of that into something I am enjoying. Mortal Terror, that comic book series I mentioned before on our comic book catch-up. Still wrestling with this idea of like, what if Dracula was a human? What if vampires were the norm and humans were the terrorists ruining the vampire society? It's so much fun. It's great. Such a fun read. So highly recommend that. I got some other stuff, but I'm going to pass it first to Christian. What's new, Christian?
Yeah, sure. I did watch the Tales from the Empire. I wasn't overly impressed with them. I don't hate them by any stretch of the imagination, but surely there were better stories to tell, is kind of my review. Then after that, Space Ghost 1 came out in comic form. Was a pretty good origin story for a new continuity, it looks like. Really enjoyed that one. Had some gripes, but overall really good. And it's kind of like an anti-recommendation. I've caught up to Mushoku Tensei, which is one of the premier isekais, and I hate Rudius as the main character so much. I hate that story. I hate everything it represents. I hate the sexualization of minors and everything in there. It irks me. That's so much good that because Mama didn't raise no quitter. Okay.
It sounds like a recommendation for Drake, you know.
There's so many things I could like. The world building is fun, but the main character sucks. I hate him. He's everything wrong with anime.
How sad.
And
well, on that positive note, Nick, what's new? Just a quick lightning round.
What's new? You know, I'm gonna break into the theology world because this is systematic geekology. We cross over.
Here we go.
So I'm a member of the Wesleyan Theological Society, and our first issue of Academic Journal came out, and so it actually features our mutual friend Tom Ord, a review of his most recent books, and it gets spicy. I won't lie. So if you are,
how do I get this journal? Hold on.
You know, if go to the Wesleyan Theological Society website, you just Google it. You know, it's pretty cheap. They have student rates. They do income-based memberships, and it's you can get your hands on the Wesleyan Theological Journal.
I'm on the website right now. Anyway, do you have any other new things you wanted to shout out, or?
I've just been keeping up with Shogun. You know, that show's been really, I've really been enjoying that on Hulu. I haven't read the book, but I think I'm going to. So recommend it. I love it. Yeah.
All right, Kevin, anything for the lightning round?
Well, I went to Free Comic Book Day on May 4th, and I actually rarely do, I'll usually pick up the free issues, and I rarely read them because usually they're just kind of like previews for upcoming stuff. But I read them all last night, and the two that stood out the most were Hellboy, which, I mean, it's
I was going to mention that too.
That one was awesome. It's scripted it. It's like him and a fortune teller. It was tons of fun. Could easily appear in like mythology. And then the other one was Flash Gordon, which I didn't even know that there's a Flash Gordon ongoing coming up, but this was like the sort of like backdoor pilot for that. Excellent. I mean, the art was outstanding. Really good writing, and I mean, I'm a huge fan of the Flash Gordon movie from the '80s. So this one, they're doing both like a re-release of some of the original comics in an omnibus this summer, and then a new ongoing starts in July, I believe. And after reading this one, I'm definitely going to pick that up.
Yeah, that Hellboy was great. I also got word, and I'm really aggravated at the timing of this. This is just my complaint to the world, the universe at large. There's a new Scrooge McDuck comic coming out this June that looks so good. Like, it's going to be a 60-page special one-shot. And we just did our Scrooge McDuck episode, so I just read like a ton of Scrooge McDuck comics getting ready for that, and I'm like, dang, I actually love Scrooge McDuck comics, and here's a new one coming out. And Scotty Young's doing one of the variant covers, and he's going to be at HeroCon this year, 3 days before it releases. So I cannot get it signed. And I am so sad. I'm like, man, if this was just like literally 1 week. Anyway. Kevin, also while we're in the lightning round, did you see that new trailer for The Boys season 4?
I do not watch The Boys. I know.
What? Who was it that watched The Boys?
Kevin likes good fiction.
Yeah, like I've tried getting into it several
I
times.
love The Boys.
And I know it gets like way better, but yeah, I know. That's one of the big, like, people are surprised when they find out I'm not really a fan there. But I mean, I know it gets like better and better. It's just like that was a Christian and I were talking about that last year, where we were like, much rather watch My Adventures with Superman than The Boys. That's just me.
Oh yeah. It gets
that trailer for My Adventures with Superman.
Oh, yeah, that's good too. Nick raised his hand. Nick, you're a The Boys fan?
I love The Boys, and I've talked about it with Christian.
Me and Nick are here.
I am all about the cynicism. Give me the darkness. Show me that there's no hope. You know what I mean? That's what. But it looks like there might be some hope in season 4.
That's the only thing that could be wrong with this season.
That was my problem of getting into it. I know this is gonna be a whole episode, but like that was it was like too cynical and like just kind of like over a bit. But I know it gets more nuanced as it goes along. So maybe one day I might get into it.
I really appreciate the point. And this is where I think we should do a whole The Boys episode at some point. Maybe just me and Nick will just talk about The Boys at a Theology Beer Camp, which you could use our code. Is it Geekshire? Is that our code? All one word? I don't know. It's in the show notes. It's in the description below. You can find the code. You can go over there, get a discount, hang out with us. Nick, what's your code? You're going to be there representing the Tolkien heads.
You know, I appreciate it, but we're on Systematic Geekology. Do the Geekshire. You know, if you want to come to my Substack, which is Tolkien Pop, I have my my discount code. So come hang out.
Unfortunately, you can't like collect all the discount codes and use them together. That would be great, like the Infinity Gauntlet, but promo code.
Use them like Infinity Gems.
Ooh.
But yeah, no, I saw the trailer for The Boys. I thought it looked really good. I am excited for that. I really like the point they make that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely, and to just watch it and then show that it's not just about superhero powers, but they show like and I'm like, oh yeah, that's so good. Anyway, I just like to show the world what's wrong with the world and be like, see, we're all awful. And then once I've established total depravity, they're like, oh, he's going to go with Tulip. And I'm like, nah, I'm an Arminian. And they're like, what? And that's just fun for me.
If there's only somewhere I can go out and learn the world is bad. Oh, wait, I live in the world. I don't need to be reminded of that.
Great lightning round. Perfect. Seamless transition. We're talking about Fallout. I'm sorry, I gotta clutch myself for a minute. Sometimes I'm just too silly. But here we are talking about Fallout. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be fun. I gotta start with we gotta start with what the show is, what the series is, and our relationship to it. Like, when did we all first encounter Fallout, either as a game, series, concept, anything like that? I'll start. I actually, my roommate in college was borderline obsessed with this. Christian might know him. Shout out to Zeb. Zeb, if you're listening, you rock.
Oh yeah.
He played Fallout regularly. And me being the way that I was raised in a vault where no movies or games that had more than one swear word existed. So I didn't know about anything. No. So I really did. I didn't know any of this stuff. So I was introduced to a bunch of stuff all at once. And I still to this day, for some reason, get Fallout and Borderlands confused. So at one point, I thought that I played all the Fallout games. And it turns out that it was Borderlands that I had played. And then once I started seeing Fallout stuff again, I was like, oh, wait, that's the thing that Zeb played. That's why when I played it, it seemed nothing like what he was playing. Because it wasn't the same game.
If anything proves the American problem with reading comprehension, it's this discussion right here.
Anyway, I did, once I finally did find Fallout, I played a little bit of 3. I really enjoyed it. I've never done too much in the games, but the show came out. I had to watch it in honor of Zeb, and I was like, oh, shoot, it was so good. From the very beginning, I got like halfway through the first episode. This was what was sad. I got halfway through the first episode, and I was like, this is too good. And part of it, like the Vault stuff and everything, it was given off that that one Harry Styles movie, you know, where they're like in a cult that's like all 50s kind of theme stuff. Maybe I don't know. I don't know what it's called. Sorry,
I haven't seen that.
I think it's like Don't Worry, Darling or something.
Anyway,
sounds
interesting.
It's good, but it was good off those vibes. It was a movie my wife liked, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna get her to watch it, and she just did not like the show, and I'll get into why later. So I had to watch it alone, but I loved it. I really thought that everybody would love it. Yeah, so that's my relationship to the game, and then the show. Christian, let's do relationships first. What is your relationship to Fallout?
Yeah. Well, I have this roommate. We'll call his name John Erdley, for the sake of giving a name to a person. He may be a host of the show. And he owned Fallout 3 without the Broken Steel DLC, where they overturned the very terrible ending of that and changed it. So I played the game, was really enjoying it, got to the ending, hated it. I bought the DLC so I could have the actual canon ending to the game using John's account. No. I used my account. That's what it was. And got it there. Then he had New Vegas as well. I played that. Really enjoyed it. Fallout 4, when that came out, I was there day one. In fact, that may be a recommendation along the way when we get to that portion. So, yeah, I would love looking in the history of the lore here. I haven't played the original games. That isometric stuff just isn't for me. I think I've talked about this before on the politics episode we did for Fallout. But, yeah. That's just not for me.
Yeah. All right. So, Nick, what's your relationship with Fallout? Have you played any of the games, or is the show your first encounter? What's up with Nick and Fallout?
So the first encounter I had was probably when Fallout 3 came out. I want to say I was maybe a senior in high school, maybe a junior, and I went to a friend's house, and we were actually going for a youth Bible study, and no one showed up, and me and him just played Fallout 3, and I was like, oh, this game's pretty cool. And I was more of a platformer guy, but around that time was when that sort of genre kind of was dying, and RPGs were really big open world games were starting to really take off. Yeah. And then Skyrim came out and just blew up, the game scene. And so after, I fell in love with Skyrim, played Fallout 4, and then kind of didn't touch for a long time. And my brother-in-law pre-ordered Fallout 76, and I played it with him, and it was trash because it was not an unfinished game. And then I watched the series, absolutely loved it, re-downloaded Fallout 76, and it's actually a really fun game. So, yeah.
And here Fallout 76 got fixed. I never played it, but I heard it was bad, and then now I hear that it's not bad. So I don't know.
It's far better now.
Yeah, no, that's good stuff. Good stuff. I'm going to wait to get into my opinions on other stuff, and we're going to ask Kevin. What's your relationship with Fallout? You ever play any of the games, or is it just the show?
So just the show for me. I haven't been a gamer in a long time. There are adaptive ways to for disabled people to play video games, but I just haven't played in a long time. And so I knew obviously it was a popular game, but I really just knew the basic concept, and that was it. With the show, I knew I was going to watch it because combination of, the trailer looked really good, but also Jonathan Nolan and Lisa Joy were executive producers. And while I never watched all of Westworld because it just got more convoluted as it went along, the first season is still, I think, one of my favorite, is in the realm of TV sci-fi. So I was really excited for them to be doing a new series, and that combined with how good Last of Us was, it seemed to be a good era now for video game adaptations. So I was, definitely intrigued. And yeah, I really enjoyed the series. Even though I came in with really no context, I liked the world building, and I always, same thing I did with Last of Us, where I watched it and then kind of read about stuff about what fans of the game were saying, and how it differed. And I know this one does a lot more original story, but at the end of it, it has a lot more Easter eggs for fans of the game. So yeah, I very much enjoyed it, and Walton Goggins was another big draw for me too. So probably one of my favorite supporting actors out there, and this was an ideal role for him.
Yeah. I think I want to get a little bit more into some of the history of the game and what we mean by this being a little bit more of an original story, because it's really interesting what they did here. I think it's an incredibly smart move, and I wish more things did what happened here. So I'm going to get ahead of ourselves, and I'm going to let Christian catch us up to what I'm about to say. Basically, what they did is they treated this almost like it was Fallout 5. And they were like, hey, what if we just told a whole new story that's in the Fallout universe. I think it happened after the other stuff. I'm not really sure. It's just a separate story that happens to be in the same world with the same concepts and the same themes and aesthetics. And I was like, oh, wow. Yeah, I think many things would be better if they did it that way. Like we're just, instead of trying to retell a story and not do it as good, what if we just took like Harry Potter and told our own story in that world? I like the concept. I like what they did with that. Christian, catch us up. What is Fallout? How, like, could you just, from the beginning, what are, like, I know you've talked about it on other shows, but what are the games about? What is the show about? Just give some context. Go.
Yeah. Basically, in the not too distant future, 2077, we get to this point where a war is happening between America and China. America has annexed Canada. China invaded Alaska. We've managed to beat them back. And suddenly, nuclear bombs go off. Who set out the first bomb is a huge mystery of the franchise. And this show kind of plays with it in a different way than people were expecting. So there was some outrage over that, but that's fine. We'll get there. So the first game kind of takes place, I think, 100 years after the bombs first fall, where you're in a vault, which is where a lot of people were sent based on different recommendations on age, sex, natural talents, or just things that connected people. And I think it's the first game where your water chip is messed up, so you have to go and find another way to fix it. And then 2 is kind of a similar premise, not too long after the events of 1, where we start seeing the West Coast start to revitalize itself. We learn that there's a hidden collective of the U.S. government called the Enclave left behind, who is trying to remake America in their image, from the ashes, and you fight against them. There's tactics in Brotherhood of Steel. I think there's some limited canonicity to them, so I'm not going to focus on them. Fallout 3 takes place about 200 years after the bombs fall. You're in Washington, D.C., Virginia, Maryland at this time around, and your dad is forced to leave the vault. So you leave the vault to go and find him, as you learn that maybe there's a little more about you that's a little interesting than you expected, as he is trying to bring the waters of life to this region. They're still irradiated. He's trying to purify them. Fallout New Vegas is you as a courier whose job is to deliver stuff to different locations in the New Vegas, California area, in Nevada as well. And in DLC, I think you go to Arizona for a little bit. And you find out that there are 4 different factions vying for control of the area. And you get to choose whether you become that 4th faction or you join one of the other 3. Fallout 4 is about a little over, I think, 210 years after the bombs fall. You end up in Vault 111 at the very beginning because you are a pre-war person, well, pre-bomb person. And you either the husband or the wife in this scenario. Your wife is murdered or your husband is murdered. Your son is stolen from you. You're put in these cryogenic tubes and you find yourself 200 years plus into the future. Now you're tracking where your son is at. Now the series itself, you want me to just go through all that? Is there any questions, elaborations anyone wanted?
I think we're up to date. So basically, big nuclear war. All the games happen post-war with ramifications of how people were stored in these vaults or things were preserved throughout this nuclear bombing and then 200 years-ish of radiation. Introduce us to what this thing is before we kind of get into the meat of it. Just basic concepts. What is the Amazon series?
Okay. This takes place about 9 to 10 years after Fallout 4, where we're on the West Coast once more. We start with our main character, Lucy. She is a vault dweller who is about to get married. There are these 3 vaults that are introduced in the series, Vault 31, 32, and 33. And she's supposed to marry someone in the other vault, for genetic diversity's sake, because, hey, there's only a select group of people. It's going to be hard. Eventually, inbreeding is going to happen. You don't want that to happen. And in the process, they learned that the other vault, I believe Vault 30, I think they're 33 and the other vault was 32, had been taken over by a gang of raiders. And she is tricked into a marriage with one of the raiders. ends up having to kill him to get out of the scenario, finds out that there's probably something about the world. Oh, her dad gets kidnapped in the midst of all this. And he's seemingly just this normal Joe who is a good father. And we'll get to that later on. And she goes out to the surface where she finds that her naivete is not exactly appreciated, as she meets three other characters. We have Knight Maximus, who is part of the Brotherhood of Steel. Their whole shtick is that they make sure that technologies doesn't fall into the wrong hands. Sometimes they get a little too elitist for their own good. We're at the elitist section of their history at this point in time. And he's been tasked to help this knight who dies. So now he pretends to be him, to find this Enclave scientist who has information inside of him about a fusion reactor or something like that, if I remember correctly. And to get him, that's where we meet Dogmeat, one of many Dogmeats you'll find in the different franchises, who ends up allying with our heroes here. And we also have our boy, the Ghoul, but his actual name being Cooper Howard, who you find was actually around before the bombs. Yes. And has kind of become the antithesis to Lucy in that he's endured a lot of hardship, and we'll learn exactly why he is the way he is later on in the series. And there's this whole thing of where the head of that Enclave scientist is kind of like our MacGuffin for the series, because a lot of Fallout shenanigans happen and dismemberment happens along the way. And there's that.
Oh yeah. Man, it was so good. Even like, honestly, even the episode 1 for me, because like I haven't been entrenched in the games that much. I played a little bit of 3. I was even like shocked when it was like, oh, this person she married, boom, Raiders. And everyone just started dying. And I was like, oh, all right then. That was the point that I turned it off. I was like, I think my wife will love this. She did.
I had the same experience with my wife.
That's funny. You know why Tiffany said she didn't like it?
Why?
Well, like one of the big reasons she gave that I thought was really interesting, and it, like, once she pointed it out, it made the rest of the show really hard to watch. But I still loved it. I still enjoyed it. But it does take some points off when I do my rating. The transitions are really hard. Like, they don't have like someone walk away and it slowly transitions to something else. It's like mid conversation ends, boom, we're all of a sudden in a new scene. And I was like, oh, yeah, I'm ADHD. I don't notice stuff like that because that's just how my brain works anyway. So she was like, oh, that was a hard transitions.
I could see that because there were times where like I was really invested in particularly like Walton Goggins' backstory. And I was thinking like, oh, this episode is going to be entirely this. And yeah, like it just cuts back to the president of the vault or whatever. And so it was a little, I mean, sometimes that works, but yeah, I agree. It could have been a little more focused and paced there, but
yeah. I texted my brother about this. As soon as I finished it, you've got to watch this, but you cannot let your wife near this show because she is way too soft-hearted. And if she ever finds you holding little Malin while watching the show, she will never let either of us see that baby again. So make sure you watch it alone.
Okay, that's funny. All right, then. Well, hey, let's go ahead and... well, did anybody else have anything they wanted to add to what the show is or is about, or anything about the plot that you think is relevant to mention? We're all satisfied with Christian's work. Good job, Christian. Yay. You did a fantastic job summarizing this. I love this sound effect. It's my favorite, I think. Oh, man. So with that, let's go ahead and do our rating and reviews for this. This one's hard, so I'm going to make somebody else go first. Kevin, would you rate this 0 to 10?
Out of 10, I probably get definitely a high, like 8.5 or so. Still really, really good. I agree. The pacing was a little bit off at points, and there were times I'm like, okay, I'd rather go into this story. And having no backstory with the games, like, it's interesting hearing Christian's descriptions here because, like, some of the things I was like, what's going on here? You know, so there's a little bit of that. It does. I think it's a series that it's rewarded on rewatches, so I probably will watch it again at some point. But no, still, I mean, visually outstanding. There's some great action scenes, and also just like the world building is really good, even for post-apocalyptic is pretty common. There's a lot of stuff out there, and I think it merges that with the Cold War era really well. And then performances are really strong. I liked Ella Purnell a lot. Of course, Walton Goggins, and then Aaron Moten, I think, who plays Maximus. To verify that, but all the leads were strong, and you also got Kyle MacLachlan too, who is a big sci-fi veteran. So very much enjoyed it overall. I mean, a few issues here and there, but pretty minor. So I definitely give it a high rating. Oh, Josh, we lost you. Hold up.
I said, yeah, that helped.
There we go. There we go. Yeah.
That helped me a lot. I think I'm pretty much there with Kevin. I'm going to give it an 8. I'm going to go slightly lower than him. Just because some of the dialogue writing, like I think the performance was really well, but some of the writing of the dialogue felt very like video game-ish. And I'm like, I know this isn't like they didn't take a video game and script it, but at the same time, like there were sometimes like I feel like I'm listening to those really awkward NPC conversations when you just like get a side mission from someone, and I'm like, this is like not good for a show. Like I don't know about that. But for the most part, the acting was great. The fighting, like the action scenes, fantastic. It was gruesome. It was shockingly so, but not like as overdone as like The Boys or something like that. So I was like, it was pretty nice. I really liked the Brotherhood. I thought it was interesting. I thought the Volts were interesting. And the music choice, fantastic. I literally, I have that listened all the way through to the Spotify playlist that is based on the show twice now. I think it's great. So that's where I'm at. I really enjoyed it. I'll get into some more of the specifics a little bit later, but let's throw it to Nick. Nick, what are you thinking? 0 to 10?
I'm probably going to go 8.52. I'm not I wasn't a big Fallout nerd, so I don't have any of the gripes that like long-term fans do. And, I've watched some of the videos and done things, kind of checked things out. And even still, I thought it just feels like Fallout, which is really hard to do. Like, I'm not going to lie. I didn't even know that it was coming out, and I saw the trailer and I was like, this is going to be terrible. Like, how do you turn this? I was expecting it to be god awful. And I was really surprised with how the aesthetics felt so legit. Like, I felt like I was in, the wasteland, and had a good time. I think the only thing is just some of the stuff is it's sci-fi, it's Fallout, like whatever. But there's some stuff that even for Fallout, it's a little far-fetched. Howard Cooper, how old he is as a ghoul. Just in the world, I'm like, really? Yeah. As a ghoul, he lasted 200 years. Even for that. And I know some of the stuff, there's more to it in the story than that. But anyway, that's one of the few things that there's, even for Fallout, there's still some of the stuff where I'm like, that's a stretch. But
why. Yeah. No, I was gonna say that's why whenever you get your Coca-Cola, you need to make sure you store it near a nuclear factory so you can get Nuka-Cola, because that radiation will make you live forever. It's like superpowers.
Yeah.
I love that they actually had Nuka-Cola. I was like, yeah. That just like for some reason that was just one of those things I needed to see in the show. I don't know why, but I wanted to see it, and I was glad I did. Christian, 0 to 10, where are we at?
I'm going to rate this the highest. This is a 9.5 out of 10 for me. They nailed the aesthetic of Fallout, like some people have mentioned before. It's got the music, it's got the atmosphere, it's got all the factions you're expecting on this side of the country. Yeah, am I happy with everything that happened? No. I have some gripes with some of the lore they're messing with, but at the end of the day, the story they told is really solid. There is so much more for season 2 to come along and continue being as great as this first season was. Like the set design and everything was perfect too. The way they made the I think it's the T-60 armor look magnificent. It's almost in the same way, they made the Mjolnir armor look magnificent in Halo, but that's about the only good thing about that show. On this, on the other hand, there is plenty to love, because at the end of the day, it's not a video game in Fallout, but you could play this game if they actually made it.
Oh yeah. That was one thing I was worried about was I really kind of thought that when this ended, it was going to just end. And if there was a new season, it was going to be like, you know, how they do Fallout games. It'll just be a whole new story. And I was like, I love these characters. I don't want it to just end. So I'm glad it didn't do that because these characters are great.
Yes.
Speaking of which, now it's time. I'm going to ask everybody to list a favorite character, a favorite scene, and then a favorite fight or a favorite baddie that like they had to defeat. I'm gonna start with my favorite baddie because I loved the fighting, like all of the fighting and stuff with the Gulper, where you just look like a giant salamander. I was like, this is great, fun time. I enjoyed it. When he finally got defeated, I was like, oh, that was gross. Nice. The little boy in me was very happy with that. You know. Favorite character is Lucy. I don't usually like picking main characters. Like it feels too mainstream or whatever, but I'm like, I loved her. Like shit for me, she's the right amount of like perky fun that's still enjoyable without like, you know, any more. And I feel like it goes to like one of those characters like a la Pinkie Pie where you're like, that's too much. Chill. She was right there on the edge, which made it good. And also, you know, there's just the relatability of that whole naive and not really knowing what the world's like and being thrown into all of it. And it's like, oh, yeah, sometimes the world is like way darker than you could possibly have thought it was. And I'm like, yeah, you know, with my own background and going to UNCW and then going to all the other places and Charleston and some of the like blatant racism and stuff I've seen in Charleston, I'm like, yep, nope, this is a really relatable character. Like, I get it. I truly did not, like, this is just like a side random antic, but like, I won't tell some of the racist stuff because it involves words that I'm not willing to say. But to get an idea of like what part of the Charleston area I lived in, part of the first week, I went to a gas station and heard a man yelling at the girl in the counter because she said America. And he said, it is not a America, it's the America. I was like, all right. Well, that's where I'm living now. So, yeah. The true America. Story, fun times. The America. Yeah. So anyway, those are mine. Oh wait, did I do favorite scene?
No,
I didn't do favorite scene. So favorite character, favorite fight, favorite scene is a little bit harder. You know what? Actually, I think it's when Lucy goes back to the ghoul the first time and gives him the stuff. I can't remember what it's called that keeps him from fully turning. Like that small little act of mercy where she's like, hey, golden rule. And I'm like, yes. There's just a lot of satisfaction in that moment for me. It was nice. Let's do Christian next. Favorite scene, character, and favorite fight.
My favorite scene would be pre-bombs, where Cooper is just sitting in the office, listening in on what his wife is doing with all these other people in Vault-Tec and Robert House and these other representatives of Bohemians. They're just conducting business, and the entire world being destroyed by nuclear fire is their business. Does that make sense for capitalism? Not really, but you know, this show is doing its own thing, and that's that. But the weight and the turmoil of emotion going on in this heart, this woman that I thought that I knew, this is what she's actually about. Well, no wonder he left her behind at the beginning of the show. It's where he's taking these dead-end party jobs just to make a living when he used to be this famous actor. He can't live in the world that they're trying to create because there is still good in him.
Man, and then to see him become the ghoul, like, yeah, looking back, that scene just holds more weight. The more, like, after you've seen it and you think back on it, it's like, oh, man. Okay, sorry. Didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah. No, you're good. And well, I'm going to throw him as my favorite character too. And this is how you do a morally complex character. This is someone who is changed by the wasteland into a monster in certain respects. But yeah, physically and mentally. But he learns, and he doesn't remain static. he listens to what Lucy has to say. That moment when she does leave him the chems that he needs to keep living and not, become a feral ghoul, that changes him. There is still someone out there who believes in hope, who believes in cooperation. So yeah, he's still not, a good guy at the end of this show, but he's progressing. And he taught her you have to be a little harder. And he does look cool. Now, fight. I'm going to go with the absolute cluster abomination that is the initial them going into try and get the Enclave scientist. Lucy tries to intervene, fails miserably. Maximus intervenes, doesn't really know how to use his suit as well, so he thinks he does. The ghoul is just awesome, and how he's taking out people systematically one by one in that fight. But like the townspeople, they give as good as they get in certain respects. Man. It's amazing. I love it.
That's a good one. That's a good one. All right, Kevin, favorite scene, favorite character, and favorite fight.
Favorite scene, I think, is Maximus meeting Lucy, because so when he's trapped in the mecha suit, after his squire, I guess his squire leaves, and then both of them are at a point of mistrust and desperation, but I think they also still have humanity within them, and because Lucy has every right at that point to just leave him there, because even if he has no idea, because at this point she's been introduced to this world and everyone's tried to kill her, and so she could leave him, but and he would understand that, but also he's desperate, and I like just the tension there, the ultimately the conclusion and the beginning of their relationship. And with that, I would say Maximus is my favorite character, because he had a degree of both moral complexity and nuance. He's raised in this sort of cult military whereas that we still don't even know really what they're all about. It's a very morally gray area, and he's just kind of fighting to survive. He's kind of an underdog there, and you don't really know which way he's gonna go, if he's going to be a good or bad guy. And he has that view of himself where, when he reveals to Lucy later on that, he lied about his name, his backstory and everything like that. And he's like, I'm not a good person. And there, he certainly has incredible flaws, but also, a heart and a, sincerity that I think Lucy finds in him. So I really like that. But yeah, I just thought it was a good example of someone who is raised in this world, how are they going to turn out to be? And, and he's not inherently good. Well, I say not straight good guy or straight bad guy. I like that kind of in between, and the grayness. And so I really like following his journey. And then for fight, I'm going to have to steal Christian's as well. I love that scene. It was just that was a perfect, Western action scene. It was great seeing the ghoul unleashed there. I love the town and the aesthetic there. So that was just a perfectly choreographed and executed fight.
Yeah. I will say, I think it was a better fight than my pick. I just like Big Monster. Big Monster make me happy.
Big Monster, you can't go wrong with. It's fun.
Yeah, just, the little boy in me. So we have a 3-way tie, Nick, on the favorite character. So I can't wait to get your favorite scene, favorite character, favorite fight, because he's either going to do a tiebreaker or he's going to be like, the dog.
Dog meat all the way. Any scene with dog meat. His dialogue is perfect, Just
oh man,
best written character in the show.
Yeah, best character.
All right, Nick, go.
Favorite scene is I love when Lucy and the ghoul are at that lake, and he's trying to get the head or whatever, she's like, "What about do unto others as you would do to them?" And he's like, yeah, there's another rule, thou shalt get distracted by random BS every GD day. And I was like, that line is amazing. That's hilarious.
Perfect encapsulation of playing the games.
Oh my gosh, yes. It was great.
Yeah.
And I just love the ghoul more. And so he's my favorite character too. He's
I get it though.
He's so cool. I think his just seeing where he came from, the relationship with his wife and where his wife is, and just seeing where he is and his relationship with Lucy. I mean, I kept coming back for him and seeing how he would end up and how he would influence Lucy. and I won't do any spoilers for the end, but I just love like where him and Lucy end up, and I love, and Kevin was talking about Maximus, and just even what they did with Maximus, I thought was really cool. Just because I thought it was going to go in a different direction, and you're like, oh dang, we don't know what's going on with Maximus. This is cool.
Yeah.
So just my favorite fight, I think, is Maximus and Thaddeus. I thought it was hilarious, like when Maximus reveals himself, because he's like, oh, me and Thaddeus are like getting along right now, and it absolutely goes the wrong way, and he accidentally crushes Thaddeus's foot. He gets the fusion core taken. It's absolutely hysterical. Yeah, my favorite.
I like the funny fight.
Yeah, it was funny because the scene. I mean, the best fighting scene is the one in the town in Philly or whatever.
Yeah.
But my favorite one is the Max and Thaddeus because it's so great.
Yeah. I like Christian and Kevin went with like the best choreographed fight.
Yeah.
I went with big monster. You went with haha laughs.
Exactly.
Perfect.
There's a good
that
variety.
Perfectly encapsulates our group here. Oh man. So with that, you guys know Systematic Geekologist, we'll like to do the geekologist compared to geologist and how we like to dig in a little bit deeper. And Nick mentioned before that quote. I actually that's going to be part of what I really want to talk about here. I really, really enjoyed kind of what I think the big question the show was trying to ask was whether Lucy is just naive. Is she simply naive? She definitely is naive. But is she simply naive? Or is she actually a good person? And like you see how the world does change her, how she reacts to different things. She learns like, sometimes you got to sever a head. Sometimes you got to sever a head, She does learn. But I think she still holds on to some good. So that interaction you were talking about where she's talking to him, and because he used her as fish bait, basically, in my favorite fighting scene. And she's like, come on, what about doing to others as you would have them do to you? The golden rule. And he's like, no, there's a different golden rule out here. Thou shalt get sidetracked by every time. I'm just like, it was so funny. It was so well delivered. And it really shows the difference in these characters, I think. I don't know. What are your guys' takeaway? Do you think that Lucy was simply naive, or do you think she's actually a good person who also is naive? I'll throw Christian first. He's good at thinking.
Yeah, sure. Allegedly. I'll go with ultimately she is good but hopelessly naive at the start. And that comes across in how she treats other people. It's like, hey, but it's part of her environment. That's how she's raised. And now that she's challenged by those ideals in the wasteland, will she maintain her goodness? Will she maintain her belief in that golden rule? And ultimately she does, I would argue, in that she could have left the ghoul to die. She could have just let him stay there. But even though he had done nothing to win her over, nothing to gain her trust, she still offered him the chems he needed to prolong his life, to make sure he didn't become a feral ghoul, and that inspired him to be, at least for him, what amounts to being a better person. And part of that is her being willing to step out in faith, hoping that other people will change, and seeing a world where that very little of that exists, and still choosing to do that.
Yeah. It's like it's almost like the people in the vaults were living in this world where, hey, when we come up, it's going to be Star Trek. Everything's going to be utopia. It's going to be great. And on the surface, what was happening was the boys, but to everyone. But I mean, it brings up a good thing because I don't think it's just asking about her. I think it's even asking about the rule itself. Does the rule still have merit no matter what happens to you? Is there ever a point where you just drop your principle? And is there ever a point where it actually just makes sense? Where, you know what, at this point, the world has gone completely to, you know what, and none of these rules make sense anymore. Like, is there ever a point where you get to that? And one thing I thought was interesting, and I'm going to get a little theological here, maybe. There's different kinds of loves in the Greek, and God's love is that agape love, and that is that sacrificial love that doesn't seek anything in return. It's unconditional love. And that's what was interesting about what you're bringing out about their interaction was she stood to gain nothing from showing him that kindness. He had done nothing to earn that kindness. So in my mind, that was a moment where, I don't think she's a Christian. The show's not trying to depict that, but to me, that is an act of agape love. And I'm seeing that at that moment going, this is what the show's asking us. Is mercy, kindness, love good on its own? Or is there a world that's so dark that it doesn't matter anymore? Nick, how do you wrestle with these thoughts and questions?
Yeah, I think I'm with Christian, where she's hopelessly naive at the beginning, but ultimately is good. And, I really like that you brought in agape, just because I think that, this fallout is definitely just a reflection of what we're dealing with in the 21st century, with how much information we have, technologies, advancement. And I think this show just continues in the Fallout storytelling tradition in 2024. Just lots of questions. And I think that, with good storytelling to a certain extent, there's caricatures of certain ideals, right? So there's capitalists and communists and, militarism and all these things that are taken to these extremely nth degrees, and to critique them. And instead of saying that, one is better than the other, what becomes the standard for progressing the story in a way that is good and brings goodness to other people is Lucy's kind acts. And I think ultimately her kind acts influences the ghoul. And I think there's this, and I love that he's an outlaw and he was this cowboy actor, because it falls into this, they're both outlaws outside of these factions, and they're trying to figure out this way, which is driven by love, right? He wants to find his family again. And ultimately, her whole goal was to save her dad. So anyway, yeah, that's how I think what makes the people good, especially Lucy, and then what's maybe influencing the ghoul is love for other people. Yeah.
Yeah. Kevin, do you have anything you want to add to that, or your take? You just don't think she's naive at all, maybe?
No, I agree. But she is I agree. It's the intentional naivety at the beginning. I think the ultimate test for her comes at the end when she learns the truth about her father. And that is this whole mission has, like you said, it has been to save him. And then she finds out, oh, actually, he's the cause of a lot of this and made some horrible decisions. And maybe he's not, this good person she thought he was. And I think the way that she chooses not to just go back to the status quo and, go back to the vault like everything's fine and be with her father again, that ultimately shows her morality and where, where she is compelled to be the better person for humanity. So I think that's what really shows it. It's a really interesting arc going from, really naive to, oh, she gets this huge bombshell that changes everything for her. And she does choose to reject her father's path because of, everything he did to bring about the destruction of humanity in this world. So that I thought was really interesting. And I think that kind of shifts her away from the initial naivety and to, I really like that he's teaming up with the ghoul at the end and they're now on this journey, whereas you thought he was the villain at the beginning.
Yeah. So it brings up a lot of questions for me. Two main thoughts, just kind of going off of some of what y'all have said and just my own experiences in the world. And I think I think they're shared experiences for all of us here. The one I want to point out is we kind of went through some of this. 2020 happened, right? like we were all isolated. We weren't in vaults per se, but we got to see some of what happened. Some people missed other humans so much that like truly I saw a lot of great instances of kindness and love shown to one another because people just missed other people. Even to the extent, my favorite campground, I got shut down for a year, and I got to be one of the first people who went back when they opened it back up. And the wildlife were like swarming to people. It's like they missed that people were there. Like the horses were all like at the dock, and I'm like, this is weird. And at the same time, you had that, and then you had the people who were isolated, who maybe, you know, channeled themselves off a little bit. I can't think of the right word for some reason, and got into these echo chambers. And next thing you know, there's riots at the Capitol. You know, it's like, so you had some people who found this as an instance to realize their need for others and love, and some people who got stuck in these echo chambers and went to what I would say is the darkest, most evil places right here in our own country just a couple of years ago. And do y'all kind of see that too? Am I reaching with that, or what are your thoughts?
I think a lot of post-apocalyptic sci-fi, particularly in the past years, definitely the pandemic comes to mind and everything that we went through there. So no, I mean, and I think that was certainly on the creators' minds because, you know, having been through this global isolation together and still seeing the remnants of it, it's not like it's, you know, a distant thing of the past. I think that very much comes into play here. And how do, you know, looking at our own responses to it versus like other people we know, and then the societal impact, all of that comes into play. Watching a lot of this stuff. I mean, I felt that way watching, Endgame, even though that came out a year before, but like watching that in retrospect.
Perfect timing though.
You know, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things 2020 and beyond kind of did to me was I had to make an apology to every movie or video game or what have you, where I got angry because there was that one person or group of people, you know, that one person in a zombie movie who just acts in their own self-interest and doesn't think about the group. And it's like, no, that's unbelievable. No one would ever do that. No, not on such a large scale. And yeah, I was completely and utterly wrong. And I don't like being wrong, but I can fully admit that I was wrong because I saw reality, and reality told me there are people out there that no matter what you tell them on either side of the equation, there was plenty wrong to blame on pretty much almost every single side, is that people exist who aren't going to care about everyone else. They're going to look out for number one, and everyone else can pretty much just go to hell in their opinion.
Yeah. Nick, you have anything you wanted to add before I get to my second thing that this made me think of?
Yeah, you know, just thinking about the isolation and even how these vaults, you know, at least where Lucy came from, she was lucky enough to end up in the vault she was. But even that vault, when she realizes how much messed up stuff was going on, and then those neighboring vaults, you know, where what seemed like a great society and great etiquette and human example of human behavior was actually, you know, kind of a mask for a darker side of what was going on. And of course, once she went to a different vault and saw the darker side of that vault, that it resembled some things, but looked really different. And then all these other vaults, you know, once you get into the lore, some things are extremely messed up. And it's this isolation that I think ultimately brings about the naivete, the more darker aspects underpinning our daily lives. And I think obviously COVID did that, and the show, like you said, just kind of helps shed a light on that.
Yeah, for sure. So the other one this makes me think of, and this is like where I feel like we don't usually get into this like Christian kind of topic like this, like on the nail, like head on the nail kind of thing. But it draws me back to like early Billy Graham, where we were at a point in American evangelical, or not even evangelical at the time, American Christian culture, Protestant culture, I guess I could say, where there were a lot of fundamentalists and a lot of people who were becoming more and more progressive or more liberal. And what was interesting about that time, fundamentalists were saying we need to isolate ourselves. We need Christians should only marry Christians. We need to stay in our churches. And we, you know, because the world might taint us. They'll ruin our children, all these kind of things. And we need to just have people come to us and we'll have them saved. And we'll just create our own little cultures and wall ourselves off. And then, the progressives were doing a lot of stuff of like, which is funny because a lot of it I kind of do agree with, but, they have stuff of like, starting to do away with inerrancy, questioning all these like classic doctrines. And what Billy Graham did, which again, I'm probably closer to the progressive end these days, but I still think this is an interesting just kind of layout. Billy Graham he liked the traditional values, the traditional teachings, but did not like this idea that we had to isolate ourselves. So he kind of helped start the evangelical movement, him, Wheaton, Moody. No, Moody was part of the fundamentalists, sorry. Anyway, some of these groups got together to start the evangelical movement. And what they were looking to do was keep some of those traditional values and teachings that they liked, but not wall themselves off, to be part of culture, to accept science. Billy Graham actually even said he was indifferent about evolution. A lot of people don't know that. I thought that was really interesting. Just throwing that out there. But he liked this idea of like engaging with science, engaging with the culture, but holding to those values. And that's what's interesting here. When I'm thinking about this is that's, I think, an intentional metaphor here, not for Christianity, but for this idea of we can wall ourselves off and we wait till the radiation is completely gone to reintroduce ourselves to the world, right? That's what they're doing in the vault. And I think there's a little bit of a metaphor there of people who maybe isolate themselves a little bit too much. And then some people who are so much part of the world that they lose sight of what they actually care about. And I think that's kind of the dynamic of the game. And it's interesting to throw that onto and look at the own history of Protestantism in America. Christian, thoughts?
Yeah. Well, I completely agree with Billy Graham in that regard. If you look in history at any Christian attempt to create a utopia or to separate themselves from the world, well, what inevitably happens is fighting from within, or sin from within being revealed that destroys a community. And it happens multiple times over because, hey, we have the truth, we have Jesus, but we're still human. And what humans do is not necessarily for their own good. They'll think it is, but it causes trouble along the way. So to isolate ourselves is a massive failure of showing love to a world that knows nothing about them. Well, how are they supposed to know if we isolate ourselves, if we don't go out there and talk to them about who Jesus is, why it matters to, believe in him versus, well, they'll come to us, said no one ever who actually believed that. It's not tenable. It's not a good idea. It's very unloving to live your life in that regard. That shows the world, well, they're just going to separate from us, so why should we include them in what we're doing? And that has no place in the gospel.
Yeah. I wanted you to go first because I knew you were going to be right there with Billy Graham, because I think you agree with pretty much all the same teaching and stuff as him. I think it's a little more interesting which again, I'm not really sure where Kevin stands on some of those doctrinal issues. We haven't quite talked about it. But I know for like Nick and I, who are like soft universalists, a lot of the stuff Billy Graham taught, we're like, I don't need that. I don't love Billy Graham's teachings. But I do think he was onto something with this whole push against isolating ourselves. Nick, how do you wrestle with this part of the history of American Protestantism?
Yeah, it's funny you brought that up, just because I remember being like 10 or 11 years old, and punk and pop punk was like really a big part of like the mainstream. And I remember having this like, whatever the magazine that the Billy Graham ministry put out. And I remember they had interviews with like this dude with Liberty spikes and this chick with a mohawk, and it was like, guess who, which people, and it had like them next to people with like 3-piece suits. They were like, who was at the Billy Graham revival, and it had the punk rockers or whatever. And they talked about, their relationship to that. And I think that when it comes to like things, because when we think about Christian engagement in America, we unfortunately think about the culture wars. But the positive thing about that is that isolation thing, where people aren't isolated, or there isn't this false notion that religion hasn't played a part in creating culture and pop culture. I think what we label secular, like I'm thinking of the public school system. The reason why public schools exist is because of Protestant North Americans, this is in Canada too, a bunch of Methodists and Baptists and other mainlines said, our taxes need to go and create good Christian citizens. And let's talk to our lawmakers and get a public education system to make good Christians for the world. Okay. That's just historically true. So now these things are different and they've evolved. But like you said, I think that with Protestantism in particular, culture wars suck right now. That can be filled with pundits and, name calling. But the positive thing is that we can engage things like Fallout and Nerd Out together and say, like, yeah, we can glean positive things from these conversations and learn from each other, and use that to bridge the gap across the religious ideological aisle. Because it's always been that way.
Yeah. I'll say I think the way that they're trying to, like in Florida, where they're trying to create laws and force people to act like Christians, whether they are or not, that is not what we mean by engaging the world. Not what I mean. I don't like that. But the idea of Christians being like Lucy and being a part of the world, so that when you see someone who has been hurt so badly that they don't even believe and love others like you would love yourself, and you're able to show them such kindness that it changes their heart, that's a thing. And that's a thing that wouldn't happen if we all just stayed in vaults and isolated ourselves, right? Like, so I do think the engagement where we're acting out our values is important, not where we're forcing our beliefs on others. Kevin, how do you wrestle with all this? Where do you fall as far as like Billy Graham's beliefs, concerning this or other things? Just kind of curious how you feel about Billy Graham, actually.
No, it's okay. I mean, I am a progressive Christian here, and so like, I definitely am not for isolating, and I believe in being present in the world, of course. And I kind of think everyone here is on that, because why else will we be discussing topics like this in the first place and engaging with pop culture so regularly? But yeah, so I like the church I'm a part of now. It's different from the American Evangelical movement, but I think there are aspects of like Graham's work that did a lot, and I definitely agree with him there in terms of we should not just isolate and huddle together as like only Christians. I think that's just way more damaging, because we are here to engage with the world, show love, and you can't really do that if you're stuck in a vault like that. So I agree with that aspect of the teaching, and it's a fascinating area to look at. I mean, just like the whole movement, and how it differs, right? Because I think people do group stuff like that into the fundamentalists, and like there is this. It's a complex thing looking at the history of the church and stuff. Like there's fundamentalism, there's like the Billy Graham type movement. So it's fascinating to look at the different eras of Christianity throughout the American church in particular, and how that ties into the foundings of it in ancient times.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't know if the last part of this question, Christian, I know we need to start wrapping up soon, but as the only conservative in the room, apparently, I think of myself as like moderate, maybe a little left moderate. What's funny is I always thought myself a little right moderate. And then the last two elections happened, and now I'm like, maybe I'm a little left moderate. Yeah. Not to confuse my theology and my politics, but sometimes you're like, sometimes one impacts the other. I'll just say that. But Christian, I do think there is a point to some of this of like, hey, hold up, radiation is out there, we will die. And the part of the metaphor that I think stands out is like, there is stuff out there we're engaging with actually can be dangerous, for our soul, maybe for our values, like if I'm constantly only watching The Boys, I might become a little cynical. So how much, like, is there a point where isolating ourselves a little bit makes sense? Or do you think we just completely do away with that idea?
Yeah. In the context of the series, it's a lot better to be in a vault than to deal with the after effects of the radiation from the bombs. I think the show and the video games even play it a lot more seriously than it would actually happen in nature. If this were to happen today, like we'd recover fairly quickly. I'm talking within a few decades compared to everything going off as far as the environment and people being able to live up top again. But even with that in mind, yeah, it's a good idea not to be out and around nuclear fallout in the same way it's a good idea not to be in a drug den or, be amongst a group of people who are actively sinning in ways that are harming them and harming others, to not be a part of that process. We go to the book of Daniel. We see there's a declaration made throughout the entire kingdom. No one is allowed to worship anything but this. What does Daniel do? What do Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego do? The exact opposite. But they don't throw themselves into the fire. They don't throw themselves into the lion's den. It's the culture fighting against what is right that puts them in that location. But when those things happen, they're prepared for it because they spent their time in isolation. They spent their time in prayer. That is when it's good to isolate. But if, they had gotten found out and they just gave up and became part of the culture, then they've missed a point.
Yeah. And
in your favorite historical book, Daniel.
Yes. Not history, but it's fine. The thing that is,
it's okay to be wrong, Joshua.
No, part of it though, I think it's just common sense. Some of it, it's like, hey, if you struggle with alcoholism, don't hang out at a bar. Like, hey, if there's radiation out there that could mutate and kill you, maybe don't go outside. But on the other hand, if for some reason you're immune to radiation, or hey, alcohol doesn't bug you at all, let's go engage with people. Let's engage with culture. Let's show them, like the thing about God to me, and maybe this is because, I don't think heaven isn't out there, let's wait till it happens kind of thing. I think it's let's start working to make the kingdom of God happen right now kind of thing. I'm looking at it, I'm like, well, how can I show, the fruit of the Spirit, love, joy, peace, all this to people if I'm not where the people are? It doesn't do me any good to show other Christians that, I've got God's love, because ideally they do too. It's no shock to them. But if you're out in the world and you're doing these things and you're at a bar and you see someone struggling and you help them for absolutely no reason, that's when you can be a light in the world, right? Like, saying a little bit of common sense. I think that's really what it comes out to. Nick, Kevin, y'all have anything to add?
I take going back to the pandemic for a second too. Where we literally had to stay home in order to save us, but
yes,
there were still ways to engage with people, and I think it was interesting timing to go through pandemic like that, where technology was better than it ever was, and we could still communicate with each other. And so that was for me a lot of is like, how do I keep from being isolated when I have to be physically isolated from everyone? So that was definitely a challenging time for all of us. But again, I definitely reflect on that, especially watching shows like this and revisiting these questions.
Yeah. Nick, you got anything?
No, I just had not really thought of like the radiation being the things that can negatively affect us, like in the real world, like as a metaphor. I think that's really interesting. I need to reflect on that more. But I like what Christian.
Some way, I'm sure it relates back to Tolkien.
Oh, I mean,
everything does.
My next
6 degrees of Tolkien.
Oh, my next Substack is going to be on Fallout and Mordor. So
there we go.
Subscribing.
Yeah.
Oh man, yeah, man. And we could talk about that subject for a long time because Christians have debated it for literally thousands of years now. But instead, real quick, everybody, what are you hoping for in Fallout 2? Just shout something out that you want to see. I'm hoping for more monsters. I just got to be honest. Like, I just want to see more big, scary things get blown up. Christian, please tell me you got a more serious answer than me.
Always. I'm really hoping we got that last image of New Vegas. Like, seems like maybe something bad happened to the city. Maybe it was just the wrong type of day and the lights aren't on. Like, there's some Securitrons just left out there. Like, did they get invaded? Did something happen? Internal conflict? I want to know what's happening there. And I want to know if Cooper's wife stole his daughter from him and forced her into a vault and left him outside, because I'm kind of hoping she's still alive and in cryostasis.
Oh, and then that agape love will be put to test.
Oh, indeed.
Nick, what are you hoping for in season 2?
I really like Norm, Lucy's brother.
Yeah.
That's true.
Has been
we didn't talk
going
much about
through
him.
this. Yeah, he's like this quiet rebel, and he really doesn't do anything, but he starts going behind the scenes and he starts disobeying, and he finds out that everything is like a total conspiracy. Like it's insane. And we see him walk into the hall of chambers where people are frozen. I don't remember the right term for that. But
that's Vault 31 though, right?
Yeah. And I want to see what happens. Is he going to sit in one of the chambers and wait it out and get influenced by whatever's going on? Or is he going to rebel and leave and eventually join Lucy and the Ghoul in the Wasteland?
I'm hoping for that second one.
Me too.
All right. Guys, I know it's a cliche, but we saved the best for last. Kevin.
I also want the Ghoul to reunite with his family and see what happened there and all the mystery. And then with Maximus, revitalize the Brotherhood and make it his own thing and become a leader there.
Oh, that would be cool, man. I'm glad that you all had such better answers than more giant salamanders.
Hey, you can't go wrong there.
I mean,
there's plenty of creatures we haven't seen yet.
Get blowed up.
Deathclaw, baby. I want one.
Here we go. All right, then. Well, with that, we'll go ahead and start wrapping this one up, guys. This was a ton of fun. Hey, guys, for our supporters on Apple Podcasts, Patreon, and Captivate, we're going to be asking a bonus question. We're going to ask which piece of tech that was seen in the show would we most like to have for ourselves. So if you want to know the answer to that, support us on Apple Podcasts, Patreon, or Captivate. But for now, we're going to give some recommendations. I'm going to go first because, yeah. Mine is also a video game TV series, one that I feel like kind of went under the radar, and I'm sad about it. But the Twisted Metal series with Anthony Mackie was really good. It was a lot of fun. Not the best show by any means. It's a lot of fun, and it has Anthony Mackie. It's like, I'll take it. And the clown was disturbing, creepy. I don't remember his name for some reason. Christian, I thought would help me, but apparently he won't. But it was a good series. I highly recommend it. If you have access to Pluto, I think it's on. Or, if you know someone who has access to Pluto. Twisted Metal. It's a good show. Nick, what is your recommendation for us all?
I'm going to keep it book related, and I'm going to bring it back to Tolkien. I'm reading this book called Creation and Beauty in Tolkien's Catholic Vision. It's an excellent book. It explores creativity and the theology of creation from a Neoplatonic view. Ooh. So it gets really nerdy, philosophical. And if any of you are Tolkien fans and just want to go down deep, I think this is a good one. Man, I hate when you guys give me recommendations I actually have to go check out. It takes up so much of my time. Speaking of which, what I did for May the 4th was read that Darth Vader comic that Kevin recommended last time. Kevin, what do you got for me now?
So I'm going to go way back because I was thinking of like Cold War era sci-fi, and one of the best sci-fi movies ever is the original Day of the Earth Stood Still from 1951. So like one of my favorite black and white movies, one of my favorite sci-fi. It's just like I never did see the remake with Keanu Reeves, I think. But yeah, I know. I mean, I know it's not like great, but the original though asks some incredibly philosophical questions. It's not one of those like. There's a lot of I love them, but there's a lot of fun like cheesy, campy sci-fi movies in there. This is not one of them. Don't be fooled. Like it's actually like I think it's still relevant today. It has just a quick alien visitor who is trying to unite the peoples of Earth and get a meeting with all the leaders. And it is so well done from a cinematic angle and really well acted. So if you've never seen that, I mean, it shouldn't be hard to find on, like either Blu-ray or you could rent on Amazon or whatever. But highly recommend.
What's the name of it again?
The Day the Earth Stood Still. Do the 1951 one, not the, I think like 2008 or whatever was the remake.
day we...
The Earth stood still.
The Earth stood still, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that.
Yep.
Mm.
So that is a good one. If you like, you know, any kind of like old sci-fi movies, but even if you haven't done
That's
like
good.
any from that era, just check it out.
All right. It's $3.50 on YouTube, which tells me it's probably not streaming free anywhere, but $3.50
Yeah.
not bad.
That's not bad. Yeah.
All right,
Well worth it.
Christian, take us home. What are we recommending?
I'll second Kevin's recommendation, and I don't know where Cameron came from. Sorry, Kevin. But I'll also give my own recommendation. I'll keep it Fallout related. The new update for Fallout 4 came out. It's added some new quests and items to the game. It broke all the script extenders for the mods, but thank God those people still actually care about that. So they're fixing it as we speak, and I'm currently playing that right now.
Nice. Very nice. All right. Well then, guys, check all that out. Also, do us a favor, rate and review the show. If you're on Apple Podcasts, if you're on Spotify, hit the 5-star and the bell. If you're on your laptop, head over to podchaser.com, rate and review us over there. That helps the algorithms a lot. And don't forget to smash the like and subscribe button so that you're not smashing Will's heart, because again, he's very kind. It's not nice to do something so mean to someone so kind. Do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. And hit that subscribe button. And thank you again, Justin Vaughn. You rock, man. Thank you so much for supporting the show. And we hope you all do one very important thing for us. And remember, we're all a chosen people. A geekdom of priest.